Welcome to Johan Wickman, to Pete Odell. I am Sheila Delaney, host of Crazy Beautiful Truth, and I'm so happy to have you both here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're happy too.
So we've got Johan here from Seattle, Washington. We've got Pete calling in from Alexandria, Virginia. How are things out there, Pete? You still freezing?
Things are sunny and warm for the first time in a
Well,
few weeks. We had a terrible storm a few weeks ago that iced us in for days.
Well, I'm glad it's warming up. That's great. Well, thank you both for this. I want to say you guys wrote a book.
We did.
It's pretty great. Congratulations.
thank you.
Dying for friendship and community. And that is what we're here to talk about today. And let me tell you, there are a number of things that we could be talking about with these two gentlemen. But I really love what you put as your subtitle, Two Old Friends Attack Loneliness. We know that there is a loneliness pandemic. Anyone who's not living under a rock knows that there is a loneliness pandemic, that more of us are actually feeling lonely more often, and that more people are talking about it more often, even with other people in our world. Why did you guys decide to approach this with a book?
Well, we're approaching it from multiple fronts. And we built some software that helps connect people at events and inside communities through their shared passions and experiences and shared interests. But as we did that, we really started accumulating this immense amount of knowledge. And we decided putting in a book together that outlines this for both people that are working on the loneliness epidemic, but also for the regular people who want to find more friends, who want to build their communities up and help repair this kind of rip in the social fabric we've experienced over the last 50, 60 years, that the book was really a great way to augment our software.
Yes, that makes so much sense. Johan, I'll ask you, what do you hope people do with this book?
I hope it's an actionable book, right? I think what Pete was saying, we've learned so much in the last year in developing our software around this, and seen a lot of research and articles and a lot of different things. And there's a lot of investment going into looking at the problem. There's less action to being taken. So we took all our learnings and put them in a book and hope that there's actions that people can take in the book and really start learning how to reconnect with people, how to enter communities again, and such.
I'll say though, as I had the privilege of reading through this book, one of the things that struck me was exactly that it was not just the learning how, there were actionable steps. I could use this as a checklist for action, literally at the end of every chapter. There is a sense of, what do I do next? What's possible? What am I interested in? And I also appreciated that you included in this book, what do you want your friendships to look like? Like having people actually look inward, as well as the science of what is friendship. So let's start there. Pete, I'm going to look to you. What is friendship? How do we even recognize it?
Friendship, it's almost like an invisible appendage, right? You've got legs, you've got arms, but living without friends is it's almost impossible. I mean, it's a something that we think really is critical for every human being on the planet. And it's been that way for thousands and thousands of years, all the way from people sitting around the campfire. Occasionally they'd ostracize somebody, but that person wouldn't last long out there in the woods. We'd had this shared social experience for thousands of years. And unfortunately, we've kind of moved away from it a little bit with technology and those kinds of things. But the core is still there. The having your friends, the people you can call at 2 a.m, the people you can count on, the people that are really an extension of yourself is just critically important.
So if I understand what you're saying correctly, if we're looking at, okay, what is friendship and how do you recognize when you have it? Because a lot of us bump into a lot of people over the course of the day, right? We have lives. People might go to work. You might be sitting at bus stops, but that's not the measure. You're talking about really specific examples of people who you call when you need them. Who can you call at 2 a.m.? Whose call can you receive? And I really love that you talk at one point about the privilege of being asked for a favor by a friend. Why is that a privilege? Pete, I'm going to point that at you. Like for someone to ask you, hey, Pete, I need help. What's that do for you?
It gives me a great feeling of mutual dependency, and it builds that back and forth and the give and take where, when I have a person in my circle and people are at different levels, right? There are people that are, that I'm intimately acquainted with, Johan and I are 38-year friends. And we know a lot about each other, right? I remember Johan's kids when they were 3 years old and doing somersaults on my apartment in Sausalito, California. And they're, and I have new friends, I've just made a couple of new friends, but all along it's that feeling of mutual dependency where you can count on people. And it's a very nice feeling of knowing that the people share your views and that they really intersect with what you're trying to make happen.
Yeah. Johan, would you agree with that? The privilege of somebody turning to you and counting you as friend. What is
Yeah,
that to you?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that the notion of asking someone for help, like it's a two-way street. And I think the other thing is also when someone asks you for help, that means I trust you. Like I think you're someone who's going to show up for me. So to back to Pete was saying, it's a privilege to be asked for help, and it's something that most people find very hard to do. I think.
Yeah, I think that's true. And we have so much, I think about of all the things that get in our way, and you list them in the book, we've got AI and social media and people moving far away from one another, all of those things, but also this internal state of like pride. Like, I don't want to show that I need help because it hasn't been socially, approved. But I know I appreciated seeing that in here because it's something that matters a lot to me. It shows my friends, to your point, there is a level of trust. And it also gives me permission. When someone asks me for help, it gives me permission to ask and to lean in as well, which I think is really great. Johan, I'm going to ask you, tell me about the math of friendship. Like, as Pete said, not everybody's at the same level in tenure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Talk to me about Dunbar.
So Robin Dunbar, who's a professor at Oxford, came up with this number of 150. We refer to it as the Dunbar 150. And I think this was in relationship to Facebook a long time ago, where people were saying you can really only have 150 true friends, and different levels. There's the close friends, there's intimacy friends, there's close friends, there's best friends, there's acquaintances, and then there's all the other people, right? So the notion that you have 3,000 friends on Facebook, they're not really friends, so that you probably shouldn't be called that. Um, but that's sort of the number behind it. And I think Dunbar says this goes way back to thousands of years when tribes got to be bigger than 150. You didn't know each other anymore. The tribes had to split. And it's sort of, you can see it throughout. I think, if I remember correctly, even sort of in military, the units, they're about 150 and not exceeding that. So there's something about that number. I don't think it's necessarily like exactly 150. Actually, it doesn't matter because the bigger problem, when we set out to do this, Pete suggested that with AI, maybe we can increase that to 300. It's a valid ask, right? But then we looked and it's like, well, wait a minute. People don't even have three. So forget the
Wow.
150, right? So the notion that people would get to 150 friends, it's a big stretch. I think most people have, a handful at best. And very many have actually almost zero. And certainly not the ones you could call at 2 a.m. and ask for help.
Right. So if I recall correctly with the Dunbar 150, they're concentric circles. Is that right, Pete? Like,
Yes. So
what's
there's your inner circle, which really are the people you trust your life with. There's a next circle out, which is kind of a very, very close friend. Then there's another segment out. And that might be things like passion friends, right? Like I'm a fly fisherman, so I might have 35 friends, but it's because we fly fish together. It's not because of we drink beer and a few other things too. But there's that one cementing passion versus kind of a general friendship. And then you get all the way out to the outer rings, right? And it's funny in the book. I think we have a joke there that says a good friend will help you move your stuff. A best friend will help you move a body, right? I mean, it's a
right?
whole different, it's a whole different relationship, right? And I
Yes.
think there's another one that I don't remember well enough to waste the video on, but it's about being in jail, and I think I'll see if I don't butcher it. But a relatively good friend will come visit you in jail. A good friend will bail you out, but your best friend will go, "Boy, that was fun, wasn't it?"
I love it.
Because he's in this hell with you,
Yeah,
or she's in
that
this hell with you.
that's exactly right. I love it. I really was struck by this statistic that you include in the book from the Pew Research Center that 8% of people in the research report having no close friends. Help me to frame this because I'm thinking about when you think about the Dunbar 150s, this math has been incredibly helpful to my head and my framing as I look at this information and think about friendship and community and the work that the two of you are trying to do to actually impact change in this area. Most of us go through the day and somewhere inside of that 150, we've got maybe the regular barista at the place that I go for my coffee or the checkout person at the grocery store that I'm going to, right? There's the people like that. And then there's that second group, Pete, that you mentioned that I'm interested in, that I can think about, the fly fishing crew or when I was riding horses, the people I'd see at the barn. So they don't know my inner secrets. They don't know my, when I'm in a really good day or bad day, but they're part of a community or a connection. Where is that line between friendship and sort of community member? Is there a way to think? Do you see what I'm getting at?
Sure. I think it's an interesting melting pot between the two, right? And it varies for every person. I will tend to pick up friends, and I've always done a very good job of kind of hanging on to old friends. I've moved all around the country and lived in several countries outside of the U.S. And I've always had this compelling need to hang on to people. So I do tend to put a fair amount of work into that. I mean, I literally just had a friend pass away, and that suddenly, I had to go find a few other friends that when we were friends 25 years ago, because I didn't know if they knew that this had happened, because it totally floored me. And in
Oh,
the book, we talk about, losing friends as well, which is just a tough thing to have somebody go, and suddenly you've got the memories, but it's very scary when somebody's gone and you find out 3 to 6 months later.
yes. Yeah. Johan, what comes up for you when you think about the people that you run into? I know
So I
there's a
think
term for this, isn't there?
yeah, weak ties, right?
Weak ties.
And
Okay.
they're important. They're very important because I think when we're talking about these Dunbar circles, I think a lot of people don't have the inner five. As a good example, people say, "Oh yeah, I have really good friends," and this is maybe especially for men. I said, "Well, how many cry on the shoulder friends do you have?" And they go, "Oh, none of those." Well, those are your friends, right? So I think the ones that are outside that circle are still very important. And I think there's even some statistics that because loneliness shortens your lifespan, right? But even having weak ties, going out and talking to your barista every day or saying hello to someone in the elevator will cut that risk in half, even your weak ties.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Okay. So we call them weak ties, but boy, are they important. That's interesting
a-
naming of the weak ties.
absolutely. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the weak ties are disappearing as well, not just friendships, because, you step in an elevator these days, someone's got their AirPods in and they don't even look up and say hi. That's a missed opportunity for just a really healthy, short interaction.
And things
Interesting.
just show up on your stoop. You never see the delivery guy anymore, right? You just go out and
Yeah.
there's 14 Amazon boxes,
That's right.
and it's like, oh, I wonder who dropped these off. Nope, no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a good example because if I see the delivery guy show up or woman, I will open the door and say, "Thank you." That's an interaction. And they'll look around and say, "You're welcome." It all matters.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So when we're talking about building friendships, I'm thinking about the listener who is getting this book because they want to grow friendships, or they're thinking of somebody who wants to. Do you start on the outside and move in and sort of, I mean, there are a few ways that you talk about this in here, and it's very practical when you start talking about community and in your chapter 5, enhancing community, where you start well, let's start here. Talk to me about the different types of community. Like there's hyperlocal, talk to me about what this means.
So there's a hyper local community, which are the people within 3 miles of you, if you
So
want to
it's
use just an
literally
arbitrary
geographic.
geographic, right?
Okay.
It's your friends, your neighbors, the people you can have coffee with, the people that you can reach to, right? And then then you can even go larger. But then there are global communities like like Johan and I just recently joined Rotary, which we found to be this incredible community, and also like the YMCA, right? The YMCA is both hyper local, but they're one of the most trusted worldwide organizations from a community standpoint on the planet. And then you've got the whole digital communities, right? It's like, oh, here I'm going here to be a member of Spotify, right? The music community. When you think about the brain power that creates a Spotify community, it's incredible. People don't interact with each other face to face, but their joint, love of music and the fact that it gets ranked and one thing leads to another. There's this amazing set of things that help make these incredibly niche communities available.
How do we access those? Like for the average person who's sitting at home, what's a good starting place?
It's really a little bit of a strategic plan. It's like, what do I care about? Right. I just recently went to another book signing by Zeke Emanuel, who wrote a book called Eat Your Ice Cream. And it was a kind of a longevity book. And the first rule was don't be a schmuck. But one of the things, he talked about was he had a friend who wanted to live forever. And finally he said, "Well, what are you willing to die for?" Right? And it was odd because we had termed our book, dying for friendship and community, which is a very kind of abstract title because it both refers to the fact that 800,000 people around the world are having premature deaths every year now with because of loneliness, right? The emotional, the mental, and the physical impacts. But also, this is as you can tell from this video, Johan and I are not 22-year-old Silicon Valley guys, right? So we've adopted David Brooks's second mountain philosophy and really have taken this startup as this is what we're going to try to leave behind, right? We've got a great cartoon in the book of two old guys sitting in a little rowboat with a harpoon going after a whale called loneliness, right? And
Yep.
we just found a new title, which is we got to get a bigger boat that we just adopted yesterday. Yeah, there we go. Right. That's it.
That's
And
it.
thank you, ChatGPT, for making Tito Del a cartoonist.
I love it. It's great.
Uh,
So, Johan, let me ask you, what do you think younger people can learn from those of us who are longer in tooth about friendship?
That's a good question. And I don't know that we have much to teach the younger people. I mean, I don't know that we're any more clued in to what it takes. So, what I would say, how do you start friendships? I think you got to step out of your comfort zone. You got to be wanting it. You got to be intentional about seeking out opportunities to meet people. And I think that's where it starts. And that's where we've sort of lost the skill of meeting people, going out and putting yourself out there. And I'm an introvert. I'm just as uncomfortable as the next person. But you put yourself out there and you go up and you introduce yourself. And that's the beginning, right?
Yep.
I think was it Shasta Nelson says it takes 200 hours to build a good friend, but it starts with hello. And I
Okay.
think that's the part. So I say, you got to get out of your house. You got to get out of your sweatpants. You got to go meet people. You got to go say hello. And then that's where it starts. And I think it's a little bit of a lost art.
And
I
that's
think it
where
is.
our Connexus technology is really designed. That to me, that's the biggest hurdle, right? I mean, I laughingly tell Johan, it's like I could walk through an airport and I will stop and introduce myself to people, but it's a guy who's got a fly rod case, right? And I screwed that up once with an architect who'd put his architectural drawings in his grandfather's fly rod case. But we still had a nice chat about his grandfather being a fly
That's
fisherman.
fun.
But other than that, this whole idea of walking up to somebody and going, nice shoes, or, no, not going to do it. I mean, I may appear a little extroverted, but God, that drives me crazy. And so Connexus is really designed to give people a warm start. Certainly if the person that you're gonna meet is a pickleball player and you're an avid pickleball player, you've got something to talk about right away, right? Or if you're a Jets fan, or if you're a University of Alabama football fanatic, right? We were in the University Inn in Seattle last time I was out there, and 25 people came in, and they all looked like they were friends, except they'd all met on the bus coming over because they were all fans from Ohio State, and there was a brotherhood there that as soon as anybody recognized you from Ohio State, it's like you're in the club, you're part of the family. We're taking it on. We're taking it on faith that you're one of us.
That's so great. So I just want to, since you've mentioned Connexus, I just want to flag that for the listeners who don't know. Connexus is the app that you have been working on, that you have designed, that is complete. It's out there. It's how it was the reason, if you will, as I understand it, that you two started getting smart about friendship, started doing the research, started looking at what was out there, was in the creation of a technology as part of the solution. What do you say to the people who are like, well, wait, you just said technology is part of the problem? Johan, I'm going to point this to you.
So yeah. No, and it's absolutely right. And this is where we started. And I think Pete and I maybe weren't as clued into the whole loneliness thing when we started out, but really got into it pretty quickly. So Connexus really is driving people out of the app as quickly as possible. We want to connect people, but we always say the idea here is to get people face to face. So the goal is to, within the app, yes, but go in and meet in person. And then there's all kinds of tips and tricks on, okay, how do I introduce myself? How do I create an interesting conversation? All of that. So the technology is an enabler that gets people to meet the right people, but then very quickly also encourages them to meet in person.
Great. Okay. So while we're talking about technology, I'm curious about if you think about the role of AI and friendship, and I'm thinking about, gosh, there's so many things I'm thinking about, but one includes people who turn to, to AI to say, hey, what should I do today? I'm bored. Or, hey, I'm feeling sad. What do I do with that? And there is I think of it as the delusion of friendship by having a technology that speaks into your life as though it were a friend, but is not in any way invested in your well-being. What comes up for the two of you? I mean, you're giving an example, you're providing an example of technology that is an enabler and quick to get out, ideally. What about the rest of it? What do you have to say about how do you think about that?
So, if you're sad and you're talking to an AI, my opinion is you're going to get even sadder still, because ultimately it becomes this mirror on the wall story, right, from the kids, and you're just reflecting back to yourself. And as smart as that thing is, not two or three different reasons why I don't like the AI bots. Number one, I don't think it can replace human emotion, human connection. But also, it scares me to death that my data, me talking to this bot, is suddenly being recorded in some database somewhere. And I'm going to end up getting an ad for some kind of drug from some kind of pharmacy based on something I told my AI, right? There's this whole extension of what social media has been doing to the population that I think is going to get horrifically more worse with AIs recording, especially, kids, and building a 20, 30, 40-year database of here's everything Pete said over the, God forbid I should ever run for office and some of those thoughts come out, right? But I think, that's the downside of AI. I think AI has an incredible upside, right? I'm never going to forget a friend's birthday. I'm never going to, I can have my AI go out and say, hey, I saw so and so just got promoted, right? I saw this other thing. So and so's children just graduated from college. You ought to, I mean, those kinds of powerful enabling me to be a better friend, I think from an AI standpoint can be really good. But in general, the idea of suddenly trusting you know, my AI, I'm not going to call AI at 2 in the morning, or if I do, it's going to say, oh yeah, that's really unfortunate. I can't help you, right? I'm an AI.
Yeah. What would you add,
I
Johan?
got
Right. Yeah.
I think there's a lot to say on this topic, and I think I don't know if there's an official statistics, but I think for OpenAI, the majority of usage is for therapy or friend interaction, which is a
That's what
little
I've
bit
heard.
scary, right? Yeah. So that's not good. And the fact that some social media companies are now saying we're going to solve the loneliness crisis by creating these amazing chatbots, right? And again, the only thing AI can't replace is human connection. Real friendships should be messy. You should have arguments. You should disagree. There's all these things because that's where the growth happens.
Yeah.
If your friend always tells you you're awesome, you're great, and that's real.
It's interesting because it strikes me that again, coming back to Dunbar, when I think about that inner circle versus that outer circle, and for the people who are looking at how do we start out, there are such clear starting points in here for growing community and looking at, okay, first start with your hellos, start with the barista, start not going through the coffee shop with your headphones on and your eyes on your phone, right? Like look up, hi, thank you, have a great day, right? Some of those basics and getting brave about that. Because I'm thinking about somebody who has been checked out for 10 years. And honestly, the idea of getting out and saying hello to somebody and the idea of a messy friendship and that I'm going to get in arguments sounds terrifying, right? So how do we, and this is something so close to my heart too, how do we coax people? I guess it's moving from the outside into the center of the Dunbar 150, right?
Absolutely. And I think your new friendships aren't going to be messy from the day one, right?
Be
The
encouraged,
real
people.
the inner circle are the ones that tell you the truth.
Yes.
It takes a while to get into that inner circle.
Yeah.
So I think it doesn't start out there. So I wouldn't want to scare people off and say, you know what, say hello, and then tell them, you really should fix your hair, or are you going to wear that? I mean, I just that's not how we start out.
Right.
but also setting it up as there are things you can do to set up routines where, if the second Tuesday of every month is knitters night at one of the local pubs, right? And suddenly you've got 40 people there, knitting and communing over having a few beers or a few,
Yep.
wines, whatever it is. But it's something that's repetitive you can put on your schedule. And this was very pervasive up until about 1963. We are on this rocket ship curve of America being a joiner set of clubs and all these other things, bowling leagues. And then from 1963 literally till today, it's been a downward slide. First because of television in the suburbs, then because of computers and cat memes and cat memos on AOL, taking up a lot of people's time. Then you moved on to social media. Then you moved on to the iPhone. And then right when it couldn't get any worse, the pandemic showed up and locked everybody inside. There are a lot of muscles out there, social muscles that have atrophied. And it takes some work to get out there. And we've addressed a lot of that in the book. It's like, yeah,
Yes.
it's hard. But just like every other change in your life, you can make the you can make the decision that it's worth the journey to try to make it better. I was at a longevity conference, and the guy got up and he said, "There's four things you got to do to to make your life really happy and as long as it can be." And one of them was don't run out of money. The second was don't get Alzheimer's. The third was don't go fall downstairs, right? Because the morbidity is terrible. But his fourth point was the one that just stuck with me. And he said, "Look," he said, "if you don't have a lot of friends, you're going to die sooner." And he goes, "By the way, if you don't have a lot of friends, why do you want to stay around? What
Ooh.
what's
Wow.
there for you?" And so it's almost this intertwined thing of your friends are your life. If you go to every one of these blue zones around the world where people tend to live longer and longer than us in the general population, you find out the social part is just an incredible element, right? The red wine might help, the sake might help in Japan, but it's the community and the friendship that is really making this. So if there's one fountain of youth that does not include supplements, it's going out there and having a bunch of great friends.
Yes. I really appreciate you walking us through the reminder that these are naturally human social muscles and they have atrophied. And we can meet that with a lot of compassion and a lot of care for the people who are scared or intimidated or are thinking like this, yeah, great. I would rather add more protein. I'll live longer that way. Right. Than get, then put on real pants and go out after work. So one of the things I took away from this is start where you are, right? And so if we think about in here is what are you interested? What do you want to be more interested? What do you want to be doing more? And even looking at the places of where you work. Johan, what would you say about, you know, thinking about friendships at work and how those can be helpful? Do they
Yeah. Oh,
count?
they absolutely count. Well, one, because they're certainly weak ties, right? So they do count. And it's another aspect of why this may be changing is people aren't going to work as much. We don't see each other in person. And I know we do a lot of video calls, but it's not the same. So it is important. And I think it's important when you're at work to take a few moments that aren't only about, strategy and spreadsheets and things like that, to take a minute in the coffee room and say, "Hello, how's your weekend?" And that again is where it all starts.
Yeah.
So it is a place where we meet people. So even if you're not going to coffee shops, you're not going out to events at night, you are going to work. So
Yeah.
that's a place where you do get out of the house and you do have an opportunity to meet people.
Yeah. And connect and look at somebody's actual eyeballs and, see what's going on
Yeah.
with them. So what about, let's think about this generationally, right? When you think cross generationally, Pete, there's a great example in the book of, I want to get this right. I was just flipping. I obviously didn't mark this, but if I remember correctly, it was somebody's son. They were asking you for a connection to somebody. Do I have this right? And it was their son or nephew. And you ended up having a nice connection with somebody quite a bit younger. Do I have that
I
right?
did.
Yes.
Well, there's a couple examples I could think of. I
Mhm.
joined a group called Braver Angels, which is a political discourse group that tries to build ties between the blue and the red sides of the world. And
Nice.
as part of that, they had a program that was a cross generational conversation. So I had a 2 hour conversation, an hour separately, with a 23-year-old uh, you know, man out in Idaho. And to some degree, they're vastly different. He was from the Mormon faith. The Charlie Kirk thing had just happened. He had friends who had actually been at that. So we had this great conversation about all the things we had in common, and but also things I probably gave him three or four ideas for his next 70 years. And I almost thought, when you talk about the young generations, I'm telling I have a girlfriend, so her grandkids, which I've grown up with. So whether I'm grandpa or not, I am. But
Yep.
I tell those kids, it's like, you have, you're gonna have friends for 100 years, maybe 125 years. Hang on to your friends. And it was funny because we were driving home, and they're actually in the book under the acknowledgments because they spent about an hour going through how many friends each one of them had, who would be really trustworthy that they'd give their lunch money to if they thought they were hungry, all
Yep.
these great ideas. And the boy, where he had like 30 friends, the girls, like every time I see her, I'm like, did you ever get a final count? She goes, I'm still counting because
That's
she's
so
like,
great.
I've had a lot of friends.
Yeah.
But the young people have a special set of challenges too. I mean, if you stay inside a lot and you don't do play dates, or maybe do play dates now, but like when I was a kid, it was just a free for all. You got on your bike, you left at 8 in the morning, you came home at 7 at night for dinner, and you just made all kinds of friends.
And you knew where everybody was by where all the bikes were on the front lawn.
Right? Yeah.
This is what I
Or
remember
you,
too.
or you didn't know, which opened up a whole nother can of worms.
Right.
But
Yeah. True. Talk to me about friendship events. This is something that so you have in the appendix, you talk about how to set it up, you talk about Connexus, and I love this idea so much. Johan, will you start? What's a friendship event?
So a friendship event is, well, the kit that we talked about, and
Yes.
Pete can talk more to this too, because he's actually put a couple together over out in Delray. But it's really this idea that there's probably some people out there that want to do something. They want to get something started, but don't know how. It's like, how can we get them to help them out to get started? So we're working on this friendship event kit, which is basically something you can download. It's a complete set of instructions, how to run it, how to invite people, how to present it. We'll even have a little PowerPoint slide to talk about the importance of having friendships and why it's important for them to be there. Using our product, Connexus, to introduce people to the right people in the room, such as creating flyers, all the things that might get in the way of you actually doing it, including things like how do I find a venue, which is really hard these days.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's really what we're trying to do, is to help someone who has an idea that they want to do something to go out and do it.
That's great. So you provide the kit. So Pete, you've given it out. How's it working? How's it being received?
well, I did the first betas, so I went and I was the kid. I showed up at my public library. I had a PowerPoint and I had Connexus, and I ended up with about 45 people. A lot of people that I knew, probably 15 out of the 45, but a whole bunch of people that had just shown up and heard it was, that's like, yeah, friendship night. Let's go check it out at the library. And our library happens to have a room with 50 people, and most libraries do. That's one of the other things as part of the if you're going to go out and do some of this, finding the places where you can meet with people. There are public spaces, but there are also a lot of bar spaces, right? If you go to the average bar Monday, Tuesday night, they're like, sure, bring a group of people in. It's free. We'll let them buy drinks. We'll let them buy food, and you can do whatever you want. We did one called Fish Tales, which was a similar friendship event with a bunch of people under a fishing theme. And then we had about 35 people as well. But the kit will be, turnkey. Here's how you can make your own friendship event happen, right? And look, if you want to make some new friends, if you do a friendship event, you've already got 50 targets, and
Yeah.
and that's great. But one of the points I blew by when you asked me earlier, one of the things people can do with their social muscles have atrophied is to look at who they've forgotten. It's an amazing thing when most people start going, I remember I went to school with so and so, I worked with so and so, we used to play soccer with these kids, his parents, and you start thinking about all the friends you know or knew, but you've left them behind. So reestablishing some of those relationships can be a really easier way than going out with the nice shoes
Yes.
type of guy. And
That's true.
and
Yeah.
sometimes you have amazing catch up stories. I literally caught up with my college roommate from 44 years ago, and I don't know why we hadn't talked, but we were roommates when I was going to college, and he was out working for the same company I was, and we split up, and he went back to Vermont and stayed there for 45 years, raised 5 kids as a cardiologist, stayed married to the same woman, and then we catch up, and he goes, well, that's my story, and I'm like, well, I've lived in 16 states, I lived in 2 countries, I got divorced. I mean, I've had 22 jobs, it's just an incredible difference.
Yeah.
But it was a half hour later, we were all caught up, and it was like fantastic.
That's so great. I'll say that, I reached out in the course of a lot of conversations around the two of you taking on this book. And I reached out to a girlfriend, Beth, that I went to high school with. And she was just one of my near and dear and true. And she was, as you have talked about, not a yes woman. She was my one who was going to call me out in the most loving way, somebody I trusted. And she stood up at my wedding, we'd fallen apart. And I just texted her, said, I'm not okay with the fact we've drifted apart. How the heck are you? And let's reconnect. And was met with that same warmth and love and care. Um, And she lives in a different country, and,
Yep.
we're doing our different things, but I really
We're
love
gonna
that you
cut that
came
out
to
and
that.
you put that on our highlight reel, right? We got one. We got somebody to reconnect.
Absolutely, and it was a big deal. So that's great. So I want to also point people to the fact you have a discussion guide, so I'm gonna encourage people, go get this. It's a great resource. For those introverts who out there who are terrified, find yourself a good extrovert to adopt and take the lead on that.
Yeah.
That's
That's
right.
what I would.
The other, yeah. The thing with the book, I think that's important. It's not necessarily read cover to cover. Like you can pick up any chapter
Yeah.
that might be applicable to where you're at in your life.
I rarely read a book cover to cover anymore in order.
Yeah.
And I definitely go, and and it's helpful because what you've done for a brain like mine, and I just want to hold this up, right? You have the quick snapshots that draw me in further. So you have factors that can shape social connection. You have the charts, you have the statistics in ways that my brain can visualize in terms of flipping through that as well. You also have the friendship event kits that can be found on the website, correct?
Mhm.
Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have a discussion guide that's going to be up there to facilitate conversation. So I really want to point to the fact that this is for people, and it can feel vulnerable to say, I want to make more friends. Okay, fine. Invest in your community. Let that be the language. And from community, friendships grow. Am I creating too much distance there, or is that accurate?
We try to lay out kind of a buffet of different ways to get to things, and for certain things that work for some people, some people joining a club really is a great thing, right? You join a club and suddenly you've got 30 or 40 people, and if you like that environment, you may be set for a while, right? For other people
Yep.
it may be like, wow, I that's a little more challenging for me. I'm a bit more fickle to really work hard to find exactly the people that I want to be friends with.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is also very personal. I think if I were to go, for example, and meet one person, I might be more comfortable than if I go to a community where there's 40 people and they've been together for a long time and now I show up, I may actually feel more left out. I may feel lonelier than ever. So I think it's up to the person. If you're someone who's willing to go into a new situation and shake hands and smile, and which is probably the definition of an extrovert, but right? Yeah.
Part of it.
But actually, I think it could have the negative effect. If you're not comfortable in that situation, you might be better off connected with two or three people.
Yeah, start your own. And I think there is something about h- the privilege of taking responsibility for nourishing your own life in this way. And to take responsibility for this, not in the heavy, this was your responsibility, mom shaking a finger in your face kind of way, but this is the privilege of me being able to have this life and nurture it and care for this self, this body in the best possible way by investing in community. So I'm not doing every day alone, even if that
Yeah,
starts with interest group and starting a knitting commit
yeah,
knitting group.
and through the book and everything that we're talking about, I think it's important that people value this as much as I'm deciding to go to the gym. I'm deciding to eat healthier, right? This is just as important. And I'm hoping that that's the message that people will hear and take it very, very seriously if you want to live a long, healthy life.
People need people. Go
People
ahead,
need
Pete. What
people.
was coming up for you?
Well, the thing I want to reflect on was this idea of transitions, right? So over most of our lives, there are different transitions where this is important to pull some of these same facts out, right? I mean, I have a friend who just literally left his community of 50 years, moved 200 miles north of Philadelphia into a retired living facility, and he was petrified that he was going to get there and not make any friends. Well, this guy is generally outgoing. I called him up to interview him for the book, and he's like, yeah, no problem here. He goes, but we got a bunch of guys, he goes, that are kind of standoffish, but he goes, man, the women here are super friendly, and he's adapting, he's having a great time, right? And but that's one transition, right? And there's a big transition when you go from a high school to college. Suddenly, you went from this people you knew for 12, 14, 15 years of school. If you went to the same place, you show up at college and you got to make new friends. You get a new job. You move out of the country. You suddenly have kids, and now it's the soccer moms and the soccer dads that you're suddenly interacting with that is new. Then the empty nest happens, and suddenly you're like, wow, now, all of our old friends are gone. We got to make new ones. We move someplace to retire for our lone years. I just had a friend move to Portugal, right? And one of his biggest issues is I'm here. And he goes, I joined three clubs. And one is unbelievable. He goes, I already started making like more friends than I had when I lived in the United States because there's a huge expat population in Portugal. And so, it's important at every stage to think about how is this going to
Yeah. How do we nurture social connection? Yeah, I appreciate you
Yeah.
pointing to that. What haven't we talked about that you want to make sure is captured? I'll turn it Pete first. What haven't we
what
talked about?
have we. Well, the key is, the key is for us, the thing we're constantly focused on is how do we scale this, right? I mean, we can go attack loneliness by having a potluck and inviting 15 people we don't know, and so maybe we made seven impact points, right? But for us, we're trying to figure out, when if suddenly there's a backlash against social media, if there's new AI coming up, what's going to click with the world? And suddenly it's like, oh, there's 200 million people using our technology to make new friends, right? That's the kind of thing that we're focused on because we want to make a difference, right? We've got n number of years left, somewhere between 0 and 50, depending upon all the biological research going on, or maybe more, who knows? But
Mhm.
we want to put a dent in loneliness. So we're constantly like, well, what can we do to put a big dent in loneliness? That's really what I every day. I'm like, what can we do to make this a big deal to help people?
That's great. Thank you. Johan, what would you add?
I will second that. And I think to Pete's point, there's so many people out there doing things that are trying to build community, and it's hyper local. It's on a small scale. So how can we be someone who kind of brings this all together, right? Because I think it's going to be a lot more impactful if we do it as a larger group. All of these people, right?
I used to work for McDonald's way back when every time they had another million people, they updated the
Yeah.
numbers on the sign outside. So
I
I'd like
remember
to get to
that.
I'd like to go through that transition with Connexus where we're putting up like 1 million served, 2 million served, and then at some point it's like billions and billions served, right? And that would be the ultimate win, I think, for both of us is to think we helped enable n number of million friends for people.
Yep. And at the same time, I think if I felt like I helped one person, 10 people, 100 people, right? That's great too. I think we have loftier goals than that, but they all count. So yeah,
They
We're
all
gonna
1
hit
count.
billion
that goal
served.
with Sheila's reconnection with her friends, so we gotta mark that one off
That's exactly
and
Yeah,
move to
that's
2 or
true.
3.
I actually had one of those yesterday. I posted the book online and someone reached out to me and says, "Hey, we haven't talked in 40 years." And we had a back and forth and remembered all the
Wow.
little things. Yeah. So to your point earlier, I think it's really important. You don't necessarily have to go find new friends, dig up the old
Yes.
ones because
Yep,
it is instant. It's amazing.
yep.
Absolutely. The people who knew us when. So what I hear is there, and I know there are pockets of people trying to do this, but that you want people to buy into the movement of social connection, of not doing this ride alone. So thank
Well,
you both.
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, sorry. And I think it's important to go back to where we started out. I think to take action,
Yeah.
to do something. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of money being spent on studies and all that. Actually taking some action. I feel like there's certainly people out there taking action, but I feel like we're very focused on making some.
Yeah. And giving people tools, which I thank you for. So, in terms of website, I'm going to say that this is a growing dynamic portfolio of tools and resources that the two of you and your team are focused on. And where they want to go is perdata.ai. The book is there, the resources are going to be there. So, the discussion guide, the friendship event kit, other apps and technologies that can support. So, follow along with them.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Thank you for your commitment to this work and not leaving us all to try and figure this mess out alone.
All
Thank you,
right.
Sheila.
All
Keep
right.
keep reaching out to those old friends. There's more out there.
I will
So,
Yeah.
indeed.
all right.
Thanks.
Talk to
All
you
right.
soon.
Take
Thank you.
care. Thanks. Bye.